The metal community has come together in support of Black Lives Matter, and we're no different, so that's what this week's episode is about. Hit the intro. Welcome to another episode of Last Words here on The Pit. I'm your host, Jordan Olds, and with me this week are Travis Reilly and Katy Irizarry. How you doing, guys?
Not bad. How are you, bud?
We're in a rebellion in the middle of the plague, and my girlfriend gave me a haircut in my kitchen, so...
Yep, that's 2020, baby.
And this week, we have a very special guest from Yob and The Living Gate. Is it The Living Gate? We're going to find out right now. Aaron Reisberg.
Thanks for having me, y'all.
How's it going?
You know, it's brutal for everyone, I think. Portland's been coming together, and there's been a whole lot of positivity around town, but everybody's feeling this massive weight. The protests have been raging every day, and I've just been growing in size. And yeah, I've been participating, and I've been out to 3 of those. And you know, I've been on my phone like 5 or 6 hours a day reading about this and, you know, educating, having some conversations. Some of them have been hard. Some of them have been enlightening. What a time.
As white people, being like moving from allies to accomplice is have the hard conversations with the people who just are not informed. I think that that's a big thing. You have Living Gate is going to put out a new album on Friday, tomorrow. That has to have been a very weird experience to try to figure out how to promote and everything in this time.
Yeah, we would have been on tour. I think this would have been like the end of the tour right about now over in Europe. So we canceled that trip. And yeah, I've never released a record during a pandemic before. And we talked to the record label. We're like, do you want to push things out? And they Relapse said, nah, just keep it flowing. People are going to need music. And we can it's not a rush to get on the road. Like, people need music right now.
I've asked this to like most people on the show, but does the concept of releasing an album and not being able to tour with it or do the physical act of pushing it, that's got to feel strange.
It does feel strange. At the same time, I've never even played in the same room with those guys.
Really?
They're all in Belgium. Yeah, they're around like Ghent area, and I'm the only one out here. So we've just been sending files. I tracked my bass and sent it out. We've still never even had a band practice.
Well, that's
yeah.
So you guys were weirdly prepared for like, all right, well, we can make stuff because we never see each other.
Yeah. Basically on a Yob tour, we were touring with Weehadude, and we talked about playing some death metal, maybe starting a project one day, and then slowly, like about like a year and a half later, we started talking more about it. We did that tour with Amon Ra, and I talked to Levy more about it on that tour. We saw each other at Hellfest. Before that, I was feeling kind of unsure because I'm so far away, and it's kind of a logistical nightmare to be the only guy that lives in another country, you know, across the world. It's pretty amazing that we can send files, and, you know, I've always been in rooms with people when I'm writing music and done things that way. So this was my first foray into that kind of a thing.
You know, everybody's kind of figuring out how to make stuff. Everybody's getting really into reamping. I don't know if you guys did that for your record.
Not for this one, but reamping is a blast though.
So for those who don't know,
Like me.
reamping is taking like a clean instrument signal, like of a bass or a guitar, just a clean audio file, and sending it out like from a program like Pro Tools or Logic, and sending it out through a real amp. It allows people to be kind of distant and work with it, but it also, I've noticed that a lot of people have been able to spend more time like outside of the studio perfecting their parts and their playing, and then getting to be tone sticklers with it afterward.
Yeah, I know a band who's in the studio right now. Well, not in the studio right now, but they're recording an album right now, and the guitar player is just kind of like, you know, tracking stuff at home in like GarageBand or Pro Tools, clean, right? And then once
Yep.
the studio opens back up, they're gonna go in and like nail the tone.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just set up amps, put some mics, and move them around and crank it up.
Let's get into it. This week, we're just talking about, because the only thing to really talk about is the entire metal community getting involved and raising money for different Black Lives Matter charities. We got to talk about Jesus Piece with their shirt raising $35,000. They were going to donate all of it to Reclaim the Block, which is a Minneapolis community outreach charity. They're focusing primarily on police abolition, but you know, since their funds are full up, so Jesus Piece then donated it to two other charities, the Philadelphia Institutional Law Project and the Philadelphia Community Bail Fund. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's amazing how much money they were able to raise just by selling a T-shirt, you know. And it's like, and there's, I mean, we're going to go through other bands, but there's so many other bands too that have done it, and it's great to see the fans coming together to raise a bunch of money for so many good causes and spreading it over. You know, obviously Minnesota was kind of like fresh in everyone's mind, and all these organizations there would get like, hey, we have so much money that you guys have been donating, like let's spread it out elsewhere. So I think it's great.
Do you guys know, were they printing the shirts or did they have a company print it for them?
I assume a merch company was probably doing it for handling the printing, you know?
That's crazy. How many shirts is that?
What's 35,000 divided by 20?
Yeah.
It's good too, because, you know, the bands aren't touring, right? And like merch companies are probably kind of sweating it out a little bit because they're not having the business. So it's
right.
Yeah, that's very true, because right now, you know, we have multiple crises happening at once and businesses are suffering. So this is also helping small businesses or a small business kind of recover in a way. So there's also another kind of charity happening in this, which makes it kind of even cooler that there's just a broader scope there.
But, you know, even outside of like making new things, there's so many auctions and raffles. Like Sargent House is doing an auction of so many cool instruments from all of their artists.
I saw that.
There's a million Jazz Masters. Fender Jazz Masters are the guitar of choice, which is great because it's a beautiful guitar. There's, you know, Chelsea Wolf's, like Mike from Russian Circles, Ben Coller's giving out cymbals. It's so awesome. They're gonna raise so much money because my show 2 Minutes to Late Night, like we did just our own raffle that ended yesterday with just an Ibanez bass I got off of Craigslist that's just been on the show. We raised $5,000.
Damn.
That's just us. And we do not nearly have the reach. It's a testament to to how fed up people are with the systemic racism. You can't find a charity that every single day charities are redirecting people elsewhere.
The raffles are cool because it's like, you know, I've seen labels where it's like they're raffling off like a test press and it's like $5 gets you entered. So it's like if you get, you know, 1,000 people just throwing in $5 to try to win a record, like boom, that's $5,000 right there. It's like, it's so easy to kind of just like generate a bunch of money for all these worthy causes.
I think with 2020, like the most positive takeaway is that the metal community just comes together. And we saw that a couple of different times. Like we saw it in the beginning of the year with the coronavirus and people donating money to bands and buying merch at the, you know, the speed of light because they knew they lost income. And now we're seeing that again. And I think it just goes to show that like our community is definitely very dedicated one, and one that really just wants to like stand up for, you know, and help. And they just want to do what they can for their fellow brothers and sisters. And that's something that I always loved about metal. And it's something that it's just, I hope that is always the case. And it seems that it is right now.
Yeah. It's I feel like it's never been a perfect scene, but I think it gets a worse rap than it deserves for people being boneheads and stuff, you know. But I think that when you kind of dig in and you are involved in the community, you'll realize that there's a lot of good people involved with it.
I think from a lot of outsiders, they feel like intimidated by the metal scene because of the way some people look, like with tattoos or the way they dress. And then, so I think some people might be surprised to hear how much people have come together to support not only the bands, but the Black Lives Matter movement. There's just so much love in the metal scene that people who aren't in it don't assume that would be the case. Like Yob Mike, when he had surgery, and people came together, and it was like a matter of days, and came up with like enough money to pay for like Mike's medical bills and like a little bit extra. It was just like, boom, like a week. I see that a lot, not just, that's not like a rare thing. You know, I feel like people come out and support their bands they love.
That's very true. Like, I mean, that goes all the way back to the 90s with Chuck Schuldiner and the first time that he was diagnosed with brain cancer. And, you know, fans came together, bands came together, they rallied. Same thing with Nurgle when he had cancer. There was all kinds of charity events and raised money to help him pay for treatment. So, like, this goes all the way back, and it's something that's just like a trend and a pattern that I think people fail to acknowledge, at least people outside of our scene.
Metal coming together just to support Black Lives Matter, like everybody, even like Katy brought up Nurgle. Nurgle's in there, like supporting and being helpful. It's awesome. It's so awesome to see this. You know, activism has always been huge in punk, but I think like that has bled into more recent hardcore, and we're starting to see that come more into the metal scene. And I think we're seeing like more diverse acts. We're seeing queer doom metal bands like Vile Creature breaking the mold. We're going to talk about them later, but we're going to talk like, you know, bands like Bloodbather. The Black Dahlia Murder were a part of like the Slay at Home festival, which was the like Frank Odla from Metal Injection put together an incredible like live streams festival so quickly, and it was really genuinely fun to watch. And all of that entire event was to raise money for Music Cares and Global Giving.
That's awesome.
The week after that, they took all of the music from all the original music that was created at that digital festival and put it on Bandcamp. And now all of that money is going to Black Lives Matter charities. So everybody who's involved in that. So this, so much work, literally months of work, people creating like new songs together that with people they'll never play with ever again. No one saw a dime from that.
Yeah, Slay at Home was really cool. I watched a lot of that festival actually. And basically Frank's vision was he wanted it to be very similar to the festivals he's gone to in Europe, where it's very curated. There's multiple stages, a lot of diversity as far as artists go. And it's not just musical artists, there's also other like visual artists, and there's painters and all kinds of stuff like that. He really brought a lot of different people from this world together. He put together these incredible supergroups. I mean, for me personally, one of the coolest things in the world was seeing like Dave Davidson from Revocation, Luke LeMay from Gorgut, Liam from Dillinger Escape Plan.
It's so cool too, because all these people are like, you know, they're essentially out of work, right? Because they're musicians and they're not touring and stuff. So it's really cool for them to kind of dedicate some of their downtime / unemployed time, if you will, to like get together and write songs and raise money for people who really could use it, you know?
For sure, man.
A lot of these bands too, also, you know, originally when this came together, it was for Music Cares and to help bands affected by the pandemic. And a lot of these bands who participated, they themselves were affected. So, you know, but they were doing this really for the greater good, which was really cool. It was something very selfless at the end of the day.
Aaron, are you a recipient of the Music Cares grant?
Yes. I received a grant from them about like 3 weeks ago or so, which was amazing. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that company seems great. Like they've even, you know, not even just as of late, I've just heard of them like being super helpful for musicians who like, you know, need surgery or like just kind of all stuff like that.
Mental health as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, to wrap this up, I mean, there's a million artists donating so much to this cause. The Swords guitarist is donating a crazy guitar to the Austin Justice Coalition. We like Will Putney, the producer, is hosting a like a giveaway and a discussion with tons of musicians called We Can Do Better. It's just to try to inform people and getting people to listen through their favorite artists. I think it's an incredible idea. Warner and Sony Music Group are donating $100 million to the Black Lives Matter organization. This is unprecedented. It's, we were talking about it earlier that charities are pushing people away because they have too much. That's how you also know that you've donated to the right charity. If they're like, we have enough to do everything that we're trying to do. All right. In lieu of talking about new releases, we're going to talk about Black performers in aggressive music. We're going to highlight a bunch of bands. Let's talk about Jesus Piece. We've talked about them on the show before. They're unbelievable.
That band's super, super heavy. I haven't seen them live, but I've seen some videos. I saw they did that K Pit Kerrang, like little like small bar show, and it looked like it was just like complete chaos the entire time they played. It was super cool.
That's some of the most brutal hardcore style stuff I've heard in a long time. I've just seen some videos on YouTube, and I've listened to that newest record, and that production's wicked on that, by the way.
Yeah, the album's called Only Self. It sounds so painful. It literally sounds like rocks are falling on you, like boulders. Like the guitars are, you can make it sound really tight, and it can just sound like someone's hitting a chair with a hammer, but it's a guitar. They really find a way to make it sound like pure rage and chaos, and it's really powerful for songs that are written about screaming at your oppressor.
I love just that kind of production in a heavy album where it's so punishing and like volume thick, but you can hear everything that's happening. You can hear all that nuance still.
I'm not like a huge hardcore fan, but this is a band that actually really does speak to me from the hardcore scene. And I think it is because of that raw aggression and because there's something about it that's also a little more like on the punk side in certain like ways. And like some songs sound a little like on the thrash side, but ultimately it all has this like rage to it and this power. And I've actually never seen this band live, but in Philly, they're one of those like must-see bands. So I'm hoping that I could eventually get to a show because I hear they put on crazy shows. So a band I'm really excited to talk to you guys about is this band Mystifier. Full disclosure, look, I work at Season and Mist. This is a band on my label, but this is a band that I think is really important to talk about right now. They're from Brazil, and they were formed in the 90s. And the band really, came up in a time when Norwegian black metal was really at its peak, and they wanted to play that. And then they kind of realized, like, we're Mystifier, we're from Brazil, like, we can't play true Norwegian black metal. So they kind of like did their own thing. Really, actually, I feel had a little death metal, had a little like thrash influence to them. They kind of sounded a little bit more like that first wave of black metal. And it's a shame that they never really broke out of that scene, but at the same time, there's something that makes them kind of even more special that they're underground. And they just put out this fabulous new documentary about their tour that they did in Latin America recently. And they did 2 days in Belo Horizonte. And they even talk a little bit about some of the racism they faced in the early days and how hard it was. And there was also some classism. Beelzebub, who is the founder of the band, is brought up is that before he was in music, he was in a gang. And his gang used to beat up skinheads and Nazis. And if you know what that means.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And if you know what that means as a Brazilian, like those Nazis were legit. Like those are the boys from Brazil. So like he is definitely a really important figure and their music is awesome. So I recommend supporting the hell out of this band. And if you've got an hour of your time, check out the documentary. It's really cool. And there's a lot of history there about South American and Latin American metal.
Well, I want to bring up Bleed the Pigs, and they were a chaotic band that I have seen destroy many a coffee shop in Brooklyn. They're worth checking out if you were a fan of, I'd say, like, if you like that garagey style, like a Couch Slut, which we listened to in a previous episode. I think that they really bridge that gap between like punk and grind and like garage, and it's really cool. It's just music that like sounds like its message. But they're defunct now, and Kayla has a new band called Pulsatile Tinnitus that you guys got to check out. Just the energy She has a cosmetics line. She's doing a million things. She won't stop at all, and we're lucky for it. Let's talk about Primitive Man.
Does it get any more crushing?
It does not get more crushing than them.
Ethan, he sounds like his vocals sound like a brontosaurus. How I'd imagine a brontosaurus would sound.
Yes.
Or maybe a bigger dinosaur, if there was one. I thought that was the biggest dinosaur, but yeah.
Tune in next week when we find out what is the biggest dinosaur. But I'm from Colorado, and so are Primitive Man. But Ethan was always kind of a figure. I didn't know him personally, but I've been to many shows that he put together in small venues, and I really remember him kind of bridging the gap between like hardcore scene music that was happening at the time and sort of turning people on to death metal and grindcore. And I remember him vividly having a huge part in probably Denver becoming the metal scene that it is today.
That's awesome to hear, man. I mean, and that band is like, they're the most like agonizing, like visceral kind of like funeral doom that you could like imagine. And I did read actually that Ethan Lee McCarthy, who's the vocalist and guitarist, that he's done a lot for the scene out there, which I think is so awesome. And again, kind of circles back to the beginning with like metalheads just like really like putting in the work in our communities.
Katy, tell us about Hyrax.
Oh, so Hyrax, now they are an extremely iconic thrash metal band, and Caton Zapina is one of the founding members. He's also a very good friend of mine, someone who I actually became friends with because I was such a fan of his music, and he's always had this sense of community with his fans. They're a thrash metal band. They were signed to Metal Blade in those early days when Metal Blade was signing golds like Metallica and Anthrax. They actually maybe could have been as big as those bands, and that could maybe be the band that we might look at as the big five. After signing to a label, Caton kind of became a little disenchanted with music, and he left for a little bit. Then he later on formed Phantasm, which he formed with Gene Hoglan, who's legendary drummer of Death, Testament, and also Ron McGovney, the original guitar player of Metallica. And then after like sometime in like the 90s, he was getting like an abundance of fan mail of people telling them how much Hyrax meant to them and how much they wanted the band to come back. So he came back and he reformed the band, different members. The music is a little more like crossover now. And he's also just a pillar of this community because he is just someone who, he calls you brother, he calls you sister, because he just views any other metalhead as his family. And he is such an awesome dude. And if you're in LA and the world goes back to normal ever again, you could catch him at the Rainbow. I forget what nights he's there, but he DJs. And I guarantee, as someone who's attended one of the parties he is DJ, that he will play all of the songs that you as a metalhead want to hear.
Sick.
I had a great time because they sound like Violence if they had Bruce Dickinson.
Right.
Yeah, love it. Great, yeah. Not a bad thing to say.
Dude, I used to have, is it Hate, Fear, Power? The second record. And I had like one of those, it was like a record player cassette deck double unit. And I took that record and I slowed it down. I had this cassette that was like a half speed version of that record. And I especially loved it slowed down. But no, that was the only record I heard for a long time. Hyrax is f***ing sick.
That is a band that I always kind of wonder what would have happened if they got bigger, because I think they could have, like I said, like been, if not on the top with the big four, then like the tertiary big four, you know what I'm saying? Like the Testament, Exodus, like Overkill, like kind of like, We're
going to talk about Husbandry, who are a local Brooklyn band. Unbelievable. This is a band that you need to check out. They have an incredible vocalist. It's like the guitarist is unbelievable, the bassist, the drummer, everybody. Like they have like everything they need to probably be like a huge radio rock band. They even joke about it themselves. They refuse to just write a straightforward like verse chorus song. They won't do it. They're just gonna write mathy, chaotic, like post-hardcore prog for their entire career, and we're all so fucking lucky for it because it's unbelievable.
That's a band that I've heard their name quite a bit, obviously, like living in Brooklyn and stuff. And I hadn't heard them until this week. And I didn't know what to expect. And when it came on, I was like, oh, they're a rock band. It's like kind of rock, post-hardcore. It reminded me a little bit of this English band called Marmozets that was signed to the Roadrunner, kind of like you said, mathy and like spazzy, and like had like that, at the drive-in kind of vibe to it, where it's just kind of like a bit chaotic. And it was cool. I was pleasantly surprised, because usually when we like are doing, research and listening to bands for this, it's like, all right, here comes like something super brutal that's just gonna like punish me for an hour. And it was like, oh, cool. This is like more of a rock vibe. I like it.
They're really weird, but that's what's fun about them. Like, it's a good weird. Like, I really dig it.
I thought it was such a cool band. I'd never heard them before until yesterday. And I need to really dig into that stuff. Yeah, kind of poppy, but hardcore. And like you said, kind of like a prog, like some progressive elements for sure. Like, I didn't know it was going to come next.
It's a good blender. I usually don't like the blender of genres, but it's a good one. It's a good smoothie.
Another band I want to talk about is like incredible hardcore band. I love this band is called Bloodbather, and I'm loving the resurgence of like this early 2000s like Trustkill Records hardcore, like Vane and like Code Orange, and this is like the also nailing it. I like that they're all taking like pieces of that type of hardcore, like Converge or Nora. Remember Nora, Travis?
Ferret Records.
They're finding what's so visceral and powerful about that type of production and removing like the horrible Windows Media Player sound out of it.
It's been the last couple of years, there's been a lot of that 90s kind of revival with like the alarm clock riffs and, just like really, it kind of has, you say, like that Nora, like Sky Came Falling, shout out Long Island, like kind of stuff, it's super aggressive. It's cool.
I was re-listening to this album a few days ago. I'm like, I hadn't even like made coffee yet, and I was ready to drop kick my door down. It was
yeah, it's gonna be a good one to listen to on the subway when we get back on the train. You want to like knock someone over on the train,
All right, and since we're talking about hardcore bands, we got to talk about Bound. They're an incredible, they're more of like I would say like a 90s leaning hardcore band, but they're aggressive. Every song is like 2 seconds long, and it just runs in and knees you in the fucking nose, and it goes out the window, and you're glad it happened. Aaron, Lisa Mungo, their singer. You guys are friends?
Yeah. We became friends over the years, but at first I remember just being like, she gives me like goosebumps and makes me like tingle all over the place when I hear her do her thing. And that live show is just blistering. You have to see them live if you haven't.
Yeah, everyone in the band has just a crazy amount of energy. The bassist Rod Davis, who was he was a touring member of Cattle Decapitation. He's in the noise band Cages. He has a country project. His bass work on the record is unbelievable. And at the show, also just everybody in the band just looks like they're being electrocuted in a good way. And they're becoming Thor, but also they're gonna break the building. It's unbelievable.
I love that.
And let's close this session out by talking about Creeping Death, former guest of the show, Trey Pemberton. This band is awesome. This is the death metal that I love.
Yeah, I know I'm always the one that's critical of the death metal and black metal that we discuss, but this is the kind of style where I dig it. And it was cool having Trey on the show. He was one of my favorite guests we've had so far. But yeah, it's really cool. I'm excited to catch them when they come through New York when touring resumes, because that record's just like nonstop, like just punishing. It's great.
Yeah, they're really rad, man. And this, like, you ever like you hear a band, you like them, and then you meet the person in the band, you're like, I'm just gonna support this band the rest of my life. Like, that's how I felt about Creeping Death. Like, that's kind of band that they kind of flew under my radar for a minute. Then the show kind of led me to them. I checked them out. I was like, wow, it's actually pretty good. I'm surprised I hadn't started listening to this more. And then after we had Trey on, I'm like, this dude is so cool. And like, this is a band that I just want to support. So Yeah, it was great having him on, and that's a band that I definitely recommend checking out. Like, don't let that fly under the radar.
I saw them open for Power Trip at like elsewhere here in New York, and they were the first band on stage, and when they were done, I was like, well, we're done, we gotta get out of here. The room was already sweating. It's like there's such a visceral energy. They're a death metal band, but you can hear all this other influence. Like, you know, when we talked with Trey and he mentioned how into hardcore he was, I was like, I hear that. I hear the groove there matched with like just like the never-ending low riffs.
I mean, I love a lot of their gear shifts that they hit. Like it hits me like this old school kind of death metal thing. Like they're definitely not, I wouldn't say they're inventing anything new, that's for sure, but great old school kind of sound. And these, like, you can tell they're coming from somewhere else besides just like, they just listen to death metal. You can tell they listen to a lot of different things, and I can hear it in the changes. It's like, informed by, maybe hardcore or just like other forms of music.
I think the majority of those guys their background is from punk and hardcore, you know. I'm sure there's metal in there. I mean, they're called Creeping Death, so I imagine they're familiar with the old Metallica band, but you know.
The old Metallica band?
Ye old Metallica.
Ye old Metallica band.
Fun fact, in case people didn't know, the vocalist of Creeping Death, Risa Lavi, actually came into wanting to play music after going to an insane show that Power Trip had played in like a tattoo shop somewhere in like Texas. So I think that's really cool. And then they became really close with Reilly from Power Trip. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're like neighbors and like live near each other now, and like they're really tight. So I thought that was really cool that it's like a band that, you know, I also like kind of led this band to become a thing, and kind of was like the inspiration behind that.
All right. Well, that's the end of this episode of Last Words. Check out all these bands. You're not going to be disappointed at all. And speaking of music that is not going to disappoint you, Aaron, tell us about the Living Gates' new album, Death Lust. It comes out tomorrow. Buy it.
When leaving, Wham and I talked about doing this. We love death. We love Morbid Angel. We love Cannibal Corpse. We love Incantation. You know, we basically bonded over a lot of those bigger influential bands from the 80s and 90s. But, you know, we come from a different styles of music as well. You know, Yob, Amun-Ra. This is our first death metal project. And I love those dudes. And I can't wait to get on the road and play some shows, man.
Travis, where can the people find you?
You can find me on social media, just my name, Travis Reilly. And I also wanted to do a quick plug. I do a pro wrestling inspired clothing line called Private Hell, which you can find at Private Hell NYC. All proceeds this month are going to the Trans Women of Color Collective in Brooklyn. So check that out, privatehellnyc.com.
Hell yeah. Buy yourself a shirt with the sleeves already ripped off, and it's going to a great cause. Katy.
You can find me at Merciful Kate on Twitter and Instagram. And I just want to real quick shout out a couple of bands that didn't make the cut because we just had so many to talk about. If you're looking for some real awesome Black artist music to listen to, check out Suffocation, awesome death metal band from Long Island. Mm-hmm. Check out Candiria, awesome like math jazz metal band. Yes. Check out Animals as Leaders. They are an incredible like genty progressive tech band, and Tosin Abasi is one of the greatest guitarists like on this right now. So,
Aaron, where can the people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Bleach Lightning.
Yeah.
Anybody out there who hasn't heard Inter Arma, you got to hear that band, man. They're kind of one of my favorite new heavy things.
Out of the band to check out, just on my end, if you lean towards the punk and hardcore side of things, check out Soul Glow. Unbelievable stuff.
Yeah.
The album's like,
yes,
they're from Philly too. They're dope. Yeah.
They're so dope. The album is 15 minutes long, and you're just gonna come out of it a different person. Please follow 2 Minutes to Late Night on all social medias at 2 Minutes to Late Night on Instagram, at 2M2LN on Twitter. Please check out, we just put out a Kate Bush cover with Aaron. right here, who's on this show. It's awesome. It also features Emma Ruth Rundle, Bill from Mastodon, and Santos from Old Man Gloom. It's packed. You can follow this show and everything Pit related on all the social media at We Are the Pit. If there's something we forgot to talk about, or there's more cool bands that have awesome black artists, please put them in the comments. We want to know about them. That's it for this episode. We're here every Thursday.